Happy 4th of July, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 20th episode. That's right, July 4th, the big 2-0, 20th episode of the Wrestling Connection. I am your host, as always, your connection to the wrestling world, your host with the most, Ken Hill, and I am excited. I'm ready to make some fireworks of my own this 4th of July. Now, I'm real excited because this week was so eventful. You had the Money in the Bank pay-per-view this past Sunday. You had Monday Night Raw, where you had return after return after big time return. We'll go into that a little more, but first, do a quick review of the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Now, not all my predictions followed through. So, safe to say it was a entertaining, it was a action-packed pay-per-view nonetheless, and we had a big. Pardon me. First, we kick off with the former WWE World Heavyweight Champion Daniel Bryan making a special appearance at Money in the Bank. Daniel Bryan announcing that to play it safe, he was going to be getting a second shoulder surgery and that he would be out for longer than scheduled. Of course, WWE couldn't let this go without having a little send-off for Bryan as he goes into a second surgery. Bo Dallas, the inspirational Bo Dallas, making his presence known to wish Bryan the best and to keep believing. And Bryan, along with the rest of the WWE universe, pretty much just telling Bo, leave. We kick off the pay-per-view itself with a action-packed, a monumental tag team championship match with the Usos defending their belts against the ever so dangerous Rowan and Harper of the Wyatt family. Now, originally I predicted that the Wyatts were going to come away with all the gold this time around in a shocking prediction. Sad to say, neither Harper and Rowan or Bray came away with any gold, but they left plenty of impact. And safe to say, the tag team championship match was as closely fought as you could get. It was physical. It was no holds barred. It got right down to the nitty gritty of it. There were plenty of false finishes, times where you thought that the Wyatts were going to come away with the belts. The Usos pulling out at the last second with a monumental double team superplex on Eric Rowan, followed up with back-to-back superfly splashes to retain, but a close fought and a narrow victory for the Usos, and it leaves the door open for a potential rematch later down the line. Then we move into the Divas Championship match with the anti-diva herself, the Diva of Tomorrow, Paige, defending against one half of the Funkadactyls in Naomi. Now, this proved to be every bit the athletic affair that it was predicted to be. Naomi seemed at times to be closing in on Paige, including pulling off a breathtaking split-legged moonsault, only for Paige to find a way to come back, laying out Naomi with a brutal DDT to get the 3 and to retain her championship and prove once again to all the naysayers that Paige is here and here to stay. Then we go into a impromptu tag team match with the brand new Stardust and Goldust going up against a revenge-seeking Ryback who believed that the loss to the Dust Brothers was nothing more than a fluke, an upset. The Dust Brothers proved this wasn't the case, once again overcoming Ryback in surprisingly dominant fashion to pick up the 3 and the victory. And it seems all the more that Cody's the new face of Cody Rhodes, Stardust, is here to stay for the long run. Then we go into the first of 2 ladder matches, the Money in the Bank contract match. Now, one of the competitors, the Intercontinental Champion, Bad News Barrett, was originally scheduled a match only to be ruled out because he suffered a shoulder injury over this past Friday, and we'll talk more about that later on the show. Despite Barrett's absence from the match, you still had Rollins. You had Seth Rollins, the Authority's new Plan B. You had Dean Ambrose. You had Kofi Kingston, Jack Swagger, Dolph Ziggler, Cesaro. Well, actually not Cesaro. He was in the championship match. Pardon me. You had Ziggler. You had all these veritable competitors. You had them. It was a very athletic contest. You had so many breathtaking moments. You had at one point Ziggler for 5 minutes laying out everyone he could. Drop kicks, super kicks. At one point, laying out Kofi Kingston with a zigzag, slamming Kofi at the back of Kofi's head and Dolph's, which was scary because he's had a concussion in the past. A zigzag onto a ladder, and it seems like Ziggler was dominating. He was closing in, only for Rollins to lay out Ziggler with a steel chair, and then you had Rollins closing in, only for Dean Ambrose to lay out Rollins. And it seemed like he was going to upset Rollins and the Authority and take away the briefcase, only for the Authority's pet, the Demon Kane, to make his presence known. Chokeslam and tombstone Ambrose and hold the ladder and pave the way for Seth Rollins to his Money in the Bank contract victory. So with Rollins with the contract, be interesting to see how the Money in the Bank, the WWE World Championship match would turn out. And of course, that was a monumental match in itself. You had the WWE World Heavyweight Championship at stake. There was going to be a new WWE World Champion guaranteed. You had the first WWE World Champion, Randy Orton. You had John Cena. You had Cesaro. You had the U.S. Champion, Sheamus. Pardon me. You had Roman Reigns. You had Alberto Del Rio, and Kane himself, all in the match, all vying to be the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, and it was a brutal ball. At one point, Roman Reigns slammed a ladder on top of Randy Orton's head, legitimately busting him open and requiring 12 stitches for the face of the WWE. Apparently, the face of the WWE got a makeover courtesy of Roman Reigns, and it was not a pretty sight, believe you me. Now again, the main story here was about the Authority versus Roman Reigns. Randy Orton and Kane doing everything they could to keep both Cena and Reigns away from the WWE Championship. At one point, that seemed to be the case with Kane and Orton being the only ones standing. Kane holding the ladder for Orton, only for Reigns to come in and lay out both Orton and Kane with massive spears. And it seemed like Reigns was going to be closing in on his first ever WWE World Heavyweight Championship, only to have a standoff with Cena, of all people. Interesting little standoff right there. But in the end, once again, Orton and Kane found themselves at the threshold of the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Kane holding the standard ready for Orton, only for Cena to come in, lay out Kane with an attitude adjustment, does the same to Orton, scrambles up the ladder, and takes down the championship. And now you have John Cena, a 15-time world champion, only one title reign away from the record held by the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Like I said, now I can say this. I can understand why they put the belt on Cena. I can understand why WWE was in a state of flux. They needed a WWE World Champion. Bryan's going to be out for the next 3-4 months. You got the big summer pay-per-view, SummerSlam coming up. WWE's second biggest pay-per-view. You needed a champion going in there. And safe to say, if you want someone who's going to put butts in the seats, if you need someone who's going to sell the merchandise, who's going to sell the pay-per-view, it would be John Cena. But however, the following Money in the Bank, it was not Cena got perhaps too much of a warm welcome from the Authority. As we go into this week in review. Now, as you can see here, Cena was welcomed seemingly with open arms by the Authority, even though Cena himself remembered that Triple H and Stephanie were none too pleased to see Cena come away with the championship. Of course, you can see the Authority here trying to butter up Cena, trying to kiss up to him, with announcing that Cena would be on the cover of WWE's latest 2K video game installment. And while Cena was pleased, he realized that the Authority was being far too nice given their reactions to him winning the championship. And of course, Triple H said he didn't have a problem with Cena being champion just as long as he did it with respect. But Cena had no intention of doing things the easy way with the Authority and instead chose the hard way. And of course, Triple H was not surprised and made this match for the next pay-per-view, WWE Battlegrounds, a fatal four-way match with John Cena defending his WWE World Heavyweight Championship versus Randy Orton, the Demon Kane, no surprise there, and a shocker of shockers, given his history with the Authority, Roman Reigns. What sort of mind games Triple H plans on playing with Cena by putting Roman Reigns into the WWE World Heavyweight Championship match remains to be seen. Now, there would be a tag team match with the four competitors, John Cena and Reigns versus Kane and Orton later on. But in the meantime, Cena had a little interesting confrontation with Seth Rollins going up back, and of course Seth Rollins, he was the Money in the Bank winner. He could cash in that contract anytime he wanted to, and he had a little stare down with Cena. But of course, Rollins had his own issues before dealing with Cena. Dean Ambrose would come on and let Rollins know not in so many words that this thing between them was far from done. And despite the fact that Rollins came away with the contract, Ambrose said that was best. Because, in Ambrose's words, he was going to be a shadow on Rollins. Every time Rollins tried to cash in, Ambrose would be there to screw things up for him. He would be a ghost. He would be the ghost. He would be haunting him the entire time. And there wouldn't be a contract in that briefcase. It would be dynamite. And every time Rollins would open up that briefcase, in Ambrose's words, it would blow up in his face. Strong words from the unhinged Mr. Ambrose. Now shifting gears, like I said before, Monday night this week was a night of big returns and possibly not going to be bigger than the former Divas Champion, the longest reigning Divas Champion at 290 days in the history of WWE. The lovely new Mrs. CM Punk, AJ Lee, and my congratulations go out to the happy couple on their recent marriage. Punk, you lucky son of a gun. But anyway, AJ came out to congratulate Paige on her most recent successful title defense, and to admit that Paige was right. That Paige taking the title from AJ a few months earlier was a slap to reality for AJ, that she had taken the title for granted, that she had alienated herself from all the other divas, and that she was back to make amends, and that she was back to shake Paige's hand and admit that she was the better person, only for Paige to realize that this was the same sort of tactic, the same sort of notion that Paige brought to AJ a few months ago, that caused AJ to underestimate Paige, that caused her to challenge her to an impromptu title match, and caused AJ to lose said championship the night after WrestleMania. Now, AJ sort of brought up that, oh no, I mean, it's not up to me whether I should get a championship rematch. It's up to the WWE Universe. And when the audience responded with a resounding yes, Paige acquiesced. She granted the championship match. So she did give in to the challenge that AJ and the WWE Universe presented. Now, of course, we had the title match, Paige versus AJ, and it was a hotly contested. Paige came out roaring. Paige came out swinging. She wanted to prove once and for all that her win over AJ was not a fluke. But surprisingly, when Paige got in AJ's face to tell her that this was her house now, AJ gave Paige her own little slap of reality, rolling her up for a 3 count and coming away as a new 2-time Divas champion, and leaving a shocked Paige who earlier mentioned to AJ, "How stupid do you think I am?" Paige, that's how stupid we think you are. AJ coming away with a championship victory in her first night back on Monday Night Raw. Now that wasn't the only big return, but that was the only interesting little piece right here. As you can see here, Rusev and Lana came out after their successful night at Money in the Bank with another dominant win over the faux Real American, Big E Langston. And of course you had Rusev and Lana bragging about how Rusev dominate, Rusev crush, the Rusev revolution, and no one can stop it, only to be interrupted by the founding father, Zeb Coulter, and the real American himself, Jack Swagger. And this was a big time standoff. You had the classic Russian brute going up against the classic American. I was actually planning on saving that for the Superstar profile, but thank you. That would be Jack Swagger's Patriot music. Pretty catchy and pretty intense. But like I said, this made for a monumental turn for Swagger, a turning point, because now you have Swagger, rather than pointing out like what's wrong with today's America, you had Swagger and Coulter defending America from Lana's anti-American stance, saying that Russia is the more dominant. Rusev represents Russia. Rusev will crush. And you had Swagger making a big-time stand against Rusev, surprising with a couple arm drags and sending Rusev scurrying. So this is the beginnings of a big-time physical matchup against the Bulgarian brute in Rusev against the real American Jack Swagger. Now, like I was saying before, Monday night was a night of big time returns, and there was rumors floating about of a former WWE champion and multimedia icon making his big return. I mean, and considering how many superstars are former WWE champions and multimedia icons, that could have been anyone. And safe to say, we were thrown up a little by who came back. Of course, you have here the Miz making his return from filming the Marine 4 and making a promise that he was going to remind people, he was going to inspire the WWE Universe to love him again, because he's a Hollywood star, because he's a movie star, because the WWE Universe is missing out on his fame, on his talent. But that wasn't the only big return. As you can see to my left, the return of Y2J Chris Jericho, surprising many superstars and the WWE Universe. And Jericho welcomed Miz back in the only way he could, laying him out with a patented code breaker. Now, of course, before Jericho could grace us as only he could, saying going, Raw is Jericho, only to be interrupted by, I think, the last person anyone was expecting. Yes, as you can see, the Wyatts welcoming back, if you will, Chris Jericho, to the shock of many, and it's safe to say Jericho was not expecting this, but as JBL said during the Wyatt's entrance, a lot of things have changed, Chris, and this is one of them. And Jericho fought his best, but just like everyone before him, Jericho ended up finding himself a victim of the Wyatt's family. So this is something I'm going to point out later. This is something I like. You have Jericho coming back. You have Jericho making his latest return, and this having a feud with one of the more charismatic superstars of the past year in Wyatt, one of the more charismatic, influential, and frankly powerful superstars in Bray Wyatt. It's going to be interesting to see where the burgeoning feud between him and Y2J Chris Jericho goes. Now, we come to the main event with Roman Reigns that I talked about earlier. Roman Reigns and Cena versus Orton and Kane. Now, it was your typical main event. You had Reigns playing the proverbial Ricky Morton of the group, making the big tag to Cena. Cena makes his comeback against Orton and Kane. It seems like Reigns and Orton end up fighting to the backstage area, leaving Kane and Cena. Kane hits Cena with a chair, gets himself and Orton disqualified, bashes Cena into the steps, lays him out with a choke slam and a tombstone pile driver. It seems like Cena may have tweaked his neck. I mean, doctors are checking on him. Only, as you can see here, for Rollins to make his entrance, and it seems like he's ready to cash in the briefcase. Only for a certain Mr. Ambrose to come out and halt that attempt, driving off Rollins. And then another former Shield member, the Mr. Reign Supreme himself, Roman Reigns, coming out, laying out Kane with a massive spear and having a big-time stare-down with the COO of WWE, Triple H. And it'll be interesting to see where this little feud goes, because Reigns has made it known that he's pleased with neither Orton as the face of WWE or his daddy, if you will, Triple H. So it'd be interesting to see what direction Reigns decides to take this feud and whether he'll try to go after Orton first or just go straight to the top and take on Triple H. Now, with that being said, we now go into this week's segment of Ken's Den. Now, the main issue I want to touch on today is the way that current superstars, the new breed, if you will, have been brought up and made to compete against the stalwarts, the measuring sticks of WWE. Like say Bray Wyatt, how Bray Wyatt faced off with John Cena earlier this year. Now, Wyatt didn't come out so bad against Cena, but the problem is he never actually got a pinfall victory over Cena. He never actually pinned him. He never actually got a clean, solid victory over Cena, and that's what upsets me, is that Cena, as long as he's been around here for 10 years. 10 years he's been around here, at least 10, 11 years, and I mean, in recent years, you could count the number of pinfall losses that Cena's taken on one hand. I mean, it may be a bit of an exaggeration, but the point stands. I mean, you have Cena against Wyatt, who's one of the newest superstars, one of the more charismatic, entertaining superstars to come up, and you want him to have that impact. You want him to make a big-time impact by beating one of your stalwarts, by being one of the standard bearers in WWE. And Cena made that point early in the year, that anyone who feels like that they are the new face, that they are one of the future cornerstones of the WWE, just doesn't need to knock on Cena's door. They need to knock down Cena's door and go through him. He made that point, and it just seems all the more hypocritical that he couldn't let Bray pick up a win over him and make Bray out to be one of the biggest threats, one of the biggest heels, one of the biggest presences in WWE. Now, again, that's not to take anything away from Bray Wyatt. Or Cena. They're both great competitors, but the problem is Cena lacks the ability to properly put someone over. And I'm not talking about saying like a fluke pin on TV. I'm saying like at a big time pay-per-view. I mean, the last time Cena really did that for anyone was CM Punk in 2011. I mean, he couldn't do it for Brock Lesnar. He couldn't do it for Bray Wyatt. He couldn't do it for the Shield. I mean, it boggles the mind. It boggles the mind why Cena can't, honest to God, take a pinfall loss. And that comes to Bray Wyatt's new feud with the returning Chris Jericho. Jericho had no problem putting others over. He's never had a problem doing that. Last time Jericho came back, he put over Dolph Ziggler. The time before that, he had that big personal feud with CM Punk, and he put Punk over as a legitimate WWE champion. Whereas when Punk feuded with Cena after Money in the Bank 2011, it was supposed to be the new summer of Punk, and yet it ended up turning into a feud between Triple H and Kevin Nash. Again, it boggles the mind, because so, I mean, that's the point. Jericho knows his role in WWE. He knows his role as an enhancement talent. He already has a storied career. Multiple-time WWE and World Heavyweight Champion. First ever undisputed champion. Tag team champion. 9-time Intercontinental champion. A record in professional wrestling. A European champion. He has literally he's seen and done everything in WWE that there is to offer. He is a legend. He has far carved his niche into professional wrestling. And anytime he makes a big return, it's a big deal, because people know that he's going to put someone over, that he's going to put over the next big superstar, and it seems like that next big superstar is going to be Bray Wyatt. But that's just it. Jericho knows his role, but I don't think Cena knows his role. John, just think about this. You are one of the faces of WWE, but if you want there to be future faces of the WWE, you have to realize that every once in a while, on the big pay-per-view stage, you have to take a loss. You have to be pinned. You have to have someone go over clean. Merchandise sales aren't going to drop because you take a pinfall loss. And this is going out to WWE too. This is going out to the higher-ups at WWE. Cena taking a clean loss on pay-per-view is not going to drop merchandise sales. It's not going to stop the screaming kids and the fans from buying tickets to come out and see Cena just because he loses one time. It's not going to be the end of the world. But apparently WWE is so hesitant to go through this, to pull the trigger for the last few years, that it just seems that's why people dislike Cena. They don't dislike him because of his promos or the fact that he's joking 1 minute and serious the next, or that he seemingly shrugs off minutes upon minutes of physical abuse only to come out with a upset victory, a last-minute victory. No one's upset about that. They're upset. What the big issue with Cena is, he doesn't really put as much effort to put a new superstar over as, say, someone like Chris Jericho would. That's the difference. Jericho knows his role. Cena does not. Now moving on, in the spirit of 4th of July, one of my favorite holidays, And from one All-American to another, we salute the real American, Jack Swagger. I will admit that is the one thing I miss about Zach. Anyway, Jack Swagger was a two sport athlete from the University of Oklahoma, both in football and collegiate wrestling, setting a record for the most pinfalls for 30 pinfalls in one season of amateur wrestling. Now, of course, Swagger, his real name being Jack Hager, would graduate from Oklahoma with a degree in finance and was ready to go into a career in accounting, only to receive his contract to WWE on the same exact day. Now, Swagger would come out to WWE in 2009 as part of the ECW brand, WWE's ECW brand, as part of the new talent initiative, and he quickly made his impact as the All-American Jack Swagger, upsetting then ECW champion Matt Hardy to win his first championship in WWE. Now, Swagger would have a fluctuating career of sorts over the next few years. He would go from competing on ECW to SmackDown to Raw. He was flip-flopping all over the place. And it wasn't really until around 2010, 2011 that Swagger would find success once again, winning the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 26 and cashing in later that week on Y2J Chris Jericho to come away with the World Heavyweight Championship, the first true World Championship in Swagger's career. Now Swagger would go on to have a couple of months of a successful reign, only to end up losing to the and then really again fluctuating, kind of floundering for the next couple of years. He would find some success in a tag team with Dolph Ziggler and winning the United States Championship from Zack Ryder in 2012. But Swagger, after losing the United States Championship to Santino Marella in 2012, would find himself on a big-time career slide, just losing match after match after match, and it seemed like that Swagger couldn't catch a break with anyone on any night. And in late 2012, said he was done. Said he needed to take time off, he needed to find himself, he needed to reinvigorate himself. And he seemingly did that, coming back fresh with a fresh new personality and a different view on America, courtesy of his founding father, Zeb Coulter. And Swagger was a new dominant Jack Swagger. He rolled through everyone. He won an Elimination Chamber match to determine a number one contender for the World Heavyweight Championship against Alberto Del Rio, coming up just a little short from taking the title from Mr. Del Rio. He would go on later in the year to form a Real Americans tag team with the soon-to-be Swiss Superman, Antonio Cesaro. While they proved to be a very physical, dominant tag team and connected surprisingly well with the WWE Universe with their chants of "We the People."
Put your hand over your heart and in a loud, clear voice say along with us, "We the People!"
Never get enough of that. Anyway, Swagger and Cesaro did prove to be a very physical, dominant tag team, but never quite reached that peak of winning the WWE Tag Team Championships. And after after a failed attempt in a fatal four-way match at WrestleMania 30, Swagger and Cesaro would part ways, courtesy of the Cesaro swing on Swagger. Now, Swagger and Coulter, after parting from Cesaro, would again flounder for the next month or so, with Swagger's most recent attempt at reestablishing himself coming at Money in the Bank. While that didn't prove fruitful, however, we saw this past Monday that his real American roots shine through once again, confronting Lana and the Bulgarian brute Rusev, and proving to be the first big face turn, the first big turn for Swagger in his career. And it'll be interesting to see where Swagger goes as an All-American face. Now, along with Swagger, we highlight one of his signature maneuvers, the Patriot Lock. The Patriot Lock is a modified version of the ankle lock, which was introduced and popularized in professional wrestling by Ken Shamrock and then later on by Kurt Angle. Both Shamrock and Angle would use varied versions of the ankle lock. Angle's in particular, because he would use a figure four grapevine leg lock to add more twist and more torque to the ankle lock itself. Now, but just for today, we're going to demonstrate Jack Swagger's standing version of the ankle lock, which he terms the Patriot Lock. Now, how this goes is we have the opponent lying face down on the mat. Other way. Now, what Swagger typically does here, he softens up the leg first. I like to give quick thanks to Brian for helping me demonstrate this move. He pulls up, and then gives the ankle a quick twist, and essentially debilitating his opponent and forcing him to use his upper body strength to find his way to the ropes. Like so. Now again, this is done by non-professionals. We advise you not to try this at home. That goes for you crazy kids out there. And I like to give thanks to Brian. Brian, you can get up now. Our producer Brian for helping me demonstrate this move today. So now we go into the final segment for the day. A little encyclopedic knowledge of professional wrestling, Pro Wrestling 101. Now, today we just go over a few basic terms of professional wrestling, such more derogatory terms. Like, for example, we have heat. There's the term heat. Now, heat can essentially describe, like backstage heat, like someone is in trouble with other superstars or management because they violate some sort of backstage etiquette. They just rub superstars and just people in general the wrong way. They have a bad attitude, or they did something wrong. Like, for example, Miz at one point got heat on himself with other superstars because he ate chicken wings over a referee's open gym bag, and he got kicked out of the locker room as a result. That's an example of getting heat on yourself. I mean, there's also a squash match. Squash match is essentially where, it's essentially a match where one superstar completely dominates another. They shrug off all their offense. They don't sell it. They demolish them in like 1-2 minutes. It's to demonstrate like the dominance of a new. It's typically used to demonstrate the dominance of a new superstar, like say Rusev. He just comes out, he kicks and slams them, and then just locks them in the camel clutch and makes him tap out in like less than 2 minutes. And again, on the other end of that, you have the jobber. The jobber's role is to come out and is essentially fodder for the new superstar. Is to make him look good. Is to make him look dominant by saying, oh, like he's like punch, I'm having no effect here, and then he tries coming off, and then the new superstar just steamrolls him. That's what a jobber's role is. It's essentially, like I mentioned last week, he's enhancement talent. He's there to make the new guy look good, look strong and powerful.
So like Brian just did?
Essentially, yeah, because considering someone like Brian's size compared to me, he probably could have shrugged out that ankle lock anytime he wanted to. I didn't exactly have the strongest grip on there. But yeah, that's just a couple new terms in professional wrestling. A little tapping into encyclopedic knowledge right there. And that is actually it for this week, ladies and gentlemen. It was a big 20th episode. Again, I'd like to thank Brian for assisting me with the What a Maneuver segment. We'd all like to wish you a happy 4th of July. Now, if you have any questions about the show, you can contact me at wrestlingconnection@gmail.com. You can check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/thewrestlingconnection. You can contact me on Twitter at WConnection or hashtag Wrestling Connection. If you have any questions you'd like me to answer, if you'd like to be, we're accepting applications for a new co-host. So if like I said, if you're looking for some big time TV experience, if you're a big fan of wrestling, don't be afraid to reach out, and hopefully we'll get back to you. In the meantime, like I said, you have a happy 4th of July. Enjoy the fireworks. I know I will. So be connected, get connected, stay connected.